John Shoesmith brings a wealth of knowledge, and as you're talking about elderly, here's the guy who knows all about housing and things for the elderly and has given us wonderful support, wonderful information. He's been a speaker, he's been a presenter, he's been on panels, he's done it all because they recognize his expertise. From 31 different housing function things, projects, yeah, I mean, that's a few here and there. Talk to us.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. Hopefully you can, I'm not going to get too close to the mic, but I am going to lean and do some other things here. I'm talking today primarily about small house environments for memory care. Memory care is obviously something we've been talking as a need in your community, and so I thought it'd be good to take a chance, to get a chance to talk a little bit about some of what's going on in that right now. So this is a project actually that was done in 1997, so quite a while ago. And really the point about it is that research has long supported the idea that people with memory impairment do better when they're in groups that are small. And the research puts it at about 12 people. If you're going to put folks in an environment together, it's better to break up the environment so that you've got groups of 12, 10, or less. That way the environment, the social network of it doesn't become overwhelming for them, okay? And so this is a project that we did in Lake Oswego, Oregon, again in '97, where we took what is otherwise, kind of an institutional building, it's a big building, but tried to take and break it up so that in the memory care area, we created these households. That was the nomenclature at the time, households of about 8 to 10, 12 people. Okay, and the idea was that everybody had a blue room in this household that went around kind of a living dining room. That was where they ate and did all of their activities. And by breaking down the environment that way, it would support folks better. And this was actually revolutionary back then. We won some best practices awards from Contemporary Long-Term Care magazine and various nonprofit organizations for this thought. But really what was truly revolutionary at the time was some work that was being done across the country by a gentleman named Dr. Bill Thomas. Dr. Bill Thomas was a physician from New York who thought that skilled nursing needed to be changed, okay? And the way that we needed to do it was to create what he called a greenhouse. A greenhouse was a house that was created with 10 people, okay, around, again, living, dining, common space, okay? And they look very much like a regular house, okay? But they're skilled nursing licensed environments. His litmus test for whether or not you should include something in the environment for these houses was, would I find it in my home? And so there are no carts, okay? There are no trappings of what otherwise is a fairly institutional environment just because of how the processes and regulations and things have controlled it over time. So a lot of people became really, really interested in this model, none the least of which were some researchers who thought, hey, let's take a look at this and see if this actually is really better for the people who are living there. So there was a huge study that was done by the University of Minnesota. Dr. Rosalie Kane went in to a number of the greenhouses and did a big study that looked at, are there measurable quality of life outcomes for the people who are living here? And in fact, they found that there were. Okay? That meant that the greenhouses exploded. Interest was great, and they looked at replicating the model across the country. As they started doing that, Dr. Thomas, being a businessman as well, trademarked the greenhouses so that to do a greenhouse, okay, you had to follow a very prescribed protocol in how the building came together, how the care team was constructed, how operationally things went as well. Well, there are a lot of people who thought this is a good idea, but I don't want to do all that. Okay? And so there was a parallel movement called small houses. Okay? And so the small house movement is what I'm going to be talking about today in my piece. A big part of the challenge, though, of course, is economy, right? And how do we make these things work on a scale that makes some sense? And what they found also with the greenhouses were that 10 people wasn't enough, okay? You needed multiples of the 10 people in order to pay for staff, okay, to be done, staffing to be done on a reasonable or efficient basis, okay? And so they looked at how can we take these houses, so take a single greenhouse and add it to a single greenhouse, and then extract these things up 3-4 stories, okay, to get different scales and scalability to see where it worked. It's still the 10 residents and the 10 residents, okay, but it's pulled together so that they get more people for that nurse to share across the way, and the CNAs to divide efficiently if not. What happened at the same time where people were looking like, well, is 10 really the right number, right? 10's good and all, but is 10 the magic thing? And so they did come around and find that actually, if you stacked 12 to 14 residents around, that actually was kind of a magic number, okay? In terms of the efficiency, in terms of the operational piece. And so you could still take the house of the 12 to 14, but you could stack it 2 floors, okay? And from the outside, you had a building that had a 10,000 square foot floor plate, okay? So big buildings, you know, 3-4 times, I mean, these are big, big houses, right? But you could break it up in a way that it actually felt fairly comfortable and like regular housing stock that you'd expect in most communities. I have the pleasure of sitting on a bunch of national code committees, and one of them was around memory care and codes related to memory care and memory impairment, and the building code side of that. And I had the pleasure of sitting with Michael Smith, who's the president and CEO of the Alzheimer's Resource Center, on one of the committees. And he said something that has stuck with me for 2 reasons. And the statement's up here on the screen. The stigma around dementia creates a sense of otherness that leads people to believe that they need to create a different design solution for people with dementia. But in reality, the things they want aren't really different from that anyone wants. Okay? To me, there's 2 nuggets in here that if it's the only takeaway you have, they're good ones. The first is this whole idea of this, because people have dementia, we believe that we need to create a different design solution for those people. Okay. Well, what's resulted from that is this kind of concept of Main Street. And you know, I think that's what he's getting at, is because people have dementia, we think, okay, we've got to do something different, okay, in terms of how we design for people. And Main Street's an example of that. The proponents of Main Street, you know, are in love with the model because they feel that it offers increased opportunities for activity and for something called reminiscence therapy. Basically, when you have dementia, you go back to memories from the past, okay? And those memories are more present than memories that happen now. And so kind of doing the stage setting like this, okay, helps you be at a specific time or date in your dementia process. The problem with that in my mind is that not even Disney, though, can create a truly authentic experience. And that your idea of Main Street at the time and place that you were in Main Street is completely different than what it may be for me. Okay? And so, you know, I think obviously you want choice, and I'm not, it sounds like I'm being a little negative on these environments. I'm not. There needs to be choice in environment. But, you know, I think that there's been fairly little research, okay, that shows that these types of environments actually have those kind of positive outcome pieces that you'd like to spend the amount of money that you need to spend to do that kind of stage setting. Until that happens, that's kind of where my position sits. What they're doing is trying to replicate the dementia villages that happen in Europe. And the dementia villages that happen in Europe are quite wonderful, because really what they're offering is that authentic experience. It's taking the world outside, bringing it down into a smaller environment. So this is courtyards, essentially, that are around. They're houses that are set up just like people live in flats mostly, so they're set up like flats. Okay. Then you can go outside and then go to the supermarket or the cafe or the theater as just you would do in your normal day. They're not made up to look like something that happened back then, but they offer a sense of normalcy and a sense of continuing what you always did that I think is valid in an authentic way. You go outside, you go to the store, you go, to these different places, you have the experience of the sun, the rain, all these other things happening as well. And so, I think that they get there. Unfortunately, the regulation that we have in our country compared to the regulation that they have there in terms of infection control and things like that limit us somewhat in being able to replicate this fully. The other piece from the comment that I thought was interesting and has stayed with me is, and this has to do, my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and we took care of her. And the last part, that what people with dementia want aren't really different from what anyone wants. And that's engagement, stimulation, interdependence, personalization, connection, and meaning. Those are the things that are the most important. And so how can we still provide some of those experiences and do them a different way? Interestingly enough, I had the good fortune of working with a nonprofit organization in Tacoma, Washington, called Tacoma Lutheran. They're a large continuing care retirement community, and so they have Medicaid skilled nursing, about 280 beds of Medicaid skilled nursing, a little bit of living, dining, support spaces, an independent living, an assisted living building, health center, so like gym, pool, exercise, kind of facility, and that. But they really were missing being able to provide for their residents who had memory care issues. And so we created an assisted living environment for memory care for them based on the small house model, because they came to us with the vision to create a small house environment where seniors could engage in stimulating activities and live in a beautiful, supportive home-like atmosphere. This project, again, we've been fortunate, it's been fairly well received, and won a National Design Award from Leading Age, which is a nonprofit organization, for our work on it. But our goals were kind of fourfold. We wanted to maximize indoor and outdoor relationships and access to natural light. There's all kinds of research right now that natural light is it. Natural light helps reset circadian rhythm, it helps with orientation, it helps with day-night orientation, but wayfinding when you can have that connection outside and use landmarking that way as well. And so this was really, really, really an important thing for us to look at. They wanted to organize the environment so that all doors lead to success. We'll talk about that in a minute. Create an appropriately scaled home for the residents based on the household model, and then use technology. So we did a lot of little sketches ahead of time to start looking at plans. And these sketches just show, traditionally the greenhouse model and small house models have had the living and dining with the little room chiclets all the way around, but that creates kind of a dark living and dining room because you've got all those bedrooms coming around the outside and not really much opportunity for windows. So we thought, well, what if we pulled those apart and then took advantage of being able to kind of go through? Maybe we could get a green space on both sides, get more light in these spaces, okay, and have it go. So conceptually, we would change our little diagram to that. In addition, this is only 14 residents. Okay, and we talked about those economy of scale before. The only way it would work for them is if we attached it to the assisted living building. But they wanted a small house, but we needed it attached. And so the question was, how do you go about doing that? And there were great views off the site this way. This sits on a bluff, so as you come up, this is really the only place to get an entry that's accessible as you come along. And so there were a lot of factors that kind of came together in pulling the building. But the biggest one was that this sense of you came to the arrival, there was a front door for visitors, then there was this hallway that connected to the assisted living building, but it was the courtyard wall, and you walk through that to the second front door, which was for the residents. And we'll see pictures of that. So here's the plan. It's about 9,700 square feet. Each room is a private room. There are no shared rooms in this building. And they all have their own bathrooms with showers. The idea was to take a little group of 7 rooms, a little group of 7 rooms, and then have the living, dining, den, office space, and that around this side. And then actually do something Disney is great at doing, which is taking the service stuff and shoving it over out of the way so you never see it, right? If you're at a Disney resort, you often don't see what's going on behind the scenes. And so the idea was, can we create the garage then, okay, that has all the linen spaces and things like that, that help support it, but for the most part, residents wouldn't see it. So as you come up on the building, you'll see it here, perched up on the hill. This is the first view you get as you come around the assisted living building to see it. It's a large building, but we tried to celebrate different aspects of it with larger volumes and that to break up. So 9,700 square feet, we want to make it feel like a bunch of accumulation of smaller things that are together, more like a village than that. But use very residential materials to avoid some of the costs with storm drainage. This terrace here is an outdoor terrace for the residents, but it's also a stormwater planter. So they capture the stormwater, put it in the planter, and it gets deferred out from there. It saves costs on the detention side. But as you move around, you start picking up the grade so that you get to, this is the visitor front door, okay? So there's the garage, the visitor front door, and then that courtyard wall I was talking about, that's the connection across. You walk through that courtyard wall, there's a door right behind that bush there, strategically placed so you can't see it when you're coming around this way. But then this is the front door that the residents see all the time, okay? And then you open up into, again, this kind of residential scale living room, dining room space, with then a small den space off to the side. Since the space is all open, there's not really a lot of choice in terms of places for you to be able to go and just do something with a family member, with a husband, wife, etc. And so we created this little den space that can be closed off and that still has access to the outdoors and that and can go. This is assisted living licensed. Open kitchens in assisted living were a big challenge, but we tried to pull that off. Here you can see we added a lot of clear story, a lot of big windows in that to get that natural light through these spaces. Because this was going to be an open kitchen and because Tacoma Lutheran wanted to encourage the residents to be as active in the kitchen as possible, we have a lower counter that I'll show you in a minute where residents could come and help with preparing some activity kind of food stuff and that. But we put an induction cooktop, induction because you can touch the top and not burn yourself. A series of locks and that were required by the state in order to be able to have it open so that the oven's on a timer so that you can't leave the oven on essentially, items like that. But then there's this lower counter along here that you can pull up a chair to and be a part of the activity that's going on as On the den space, again, the big windows, same windows that we use on the outside, but use them on the insides to try to get that light, again, coming through spaces that are a little bit more closed off as well. And then this is the patio that's on the dining room, living room side. Giving two spaces, outdoor spaces, was great because it allows the residents to be either in an active space or a passive space. So there's choice there, but also as the sun moves through the day, this is the real bright space in the morning, and the other space is the real bright space in the afternoon. So you can pick whether you want to be in the shady space or the sun space. The resident rooms were designed, again with the private bathrooms, but the idea was that no matter where I move the bed along the wall, I see the toilet. So that when I wake up in the middle of the night and I don't know why, there's a night light above the toilet shining on it so that it helps me maybe think that I need to go to the bathroom. And that's something that, this was completed 2 years ago. That's a feature that Tacoma Lutheran loves. They say that it's actually helped them decrease incontinence episodes at night by just having that piece designed in. Oops. This is one of those things that I was talking about that we tried to incorporate that gets rid of carts in the hallway. The med cart is the big cart you see a lot of times cruising up and down the hallway. And so we decided to build these med cabinets in right at the doorway. So here's the door, and right there, I don't have a very steady hand, but right there and right there are where these are located. And they're lockable, they're double locked, so you can store narcotics in them. But essentially, it's my medicines that are stored there, okay? And when the medicines run low, in the evening, a cart will run through and refill that cabinet by basically just stepping into the doorway and doing the room. So trying not to disrupt the person who's there as much as we can. Hello, is it T? You're looking for. Wandering is a big thing that we have to deal with, and so our whole idea of all doors lead to success. We designed the building so that every door that is obvious to a resident, you can go out of. So while this is secured, you don't feel like you're locked inside. There aren't door buzzers at the doors and things like that. So that I can walk out of any of these doors here and just kind of continue and go right back. So there's indoor-outdoor loops that start happening. I can take a walk and end up back where I started pretty easily. If there's a fire, there's a gate along the side here that is very obvious. That's a panel that is locked, that will unlock and you come out of, or you come back through this kind of front door visitor thing that has a keypad. This also is an exit, but it's painted out so that it isn't obvious. Okay, it's the other door out. Most of them, though, are like this. So at the end of the hallway, there's a little area. We've widened it a little bit. And so this is our main street. This is our area of the reminiscence therapy stuff. So shelves and that are provided, and then things are brought to that will mean something to the residents who live there. Hopefully figured out by the staff and that, when people are moving in and talk to the families. And so then all the trails kind of lead back around and lead you to either outdoor spaces or the indoor spaces you want to go. One of the most innovative pieces of this building was something you can't see, and that is you don't see any fire alarm or strobes there. To me, this is one of the biggest disruptors in these environments. When I go and tour around and look at different communities, if the fire alarm goes off, it's just a big panic because people don't understand why the loud noise is happening and what to do. And so we worked with the state fire marshal, the city fire marshal, the alarm company, nurse call company, and came up with a system based on private mode signaling, which is allowed in hospitals. So when the CO alarm goes off or the fire alarm goes off, it's transmitted to the pager that the staff person is with. So then there is no horn and there's no need for the lights. And so we partnered with those entities, but also the nurse call provider and the fire alarm company to kind of design the system to be able to do this. And it's in place, it works well. The fire marshal was really concerned about visitors though. So we were able to remove both the horns and strobes in every place except for in the hallways, in the short hallways. And there, we had to keep the strobe only because the state fire marshal thought that there needed to be some way for a visitor to know that there was something going. But otherwise, it's just staff that go and they walk over and say, "Would you like to come for a walk with me?" You know, and then evacuate the people. And so this is kind of the most recent example that I have from our collection of the small house design for memory care. I hope that it's been interesting to you, and we'll take questions a little bit later.
Thank you.